I hereby introduce to you Mr. Michael Veazey.
Starting a business on your own can be lonely and worrying. Selling online multiplies this issue tenfold. Getting expert help is a great way to reduce anxiety, wasted time, and confusion. The Amazing FBA mentoring program is in its fourth year of helping sellers to get started on Amazon. By now, we have former clients who have, starting from scratch, done 6 figures and even in one case 7 figures a year. Obviously, these are not typical results. These are exceptional people. Nevertheless, we can help you get launched faster, safer, and with a much higher chance overall of success. With clients from Melbourne, Australia to Manchester, England, we bring a genuinely international perspective. To find out more, go to amazingfba.com/mentoring. Thanks for listening. Hi, this is Michael Veazey from Amazing FBA. Tony Robbins said, "The quality of your questions determines the quality of your life." Now, bit of a general statement, but this is about Amazon. I'm going to talk about Amazon advertising and some of the mistakes that people are making with the questions they're asking. Hi there, welcome. And this is a bit of a sort of fireside chat style. In fact, I don't have a fireside, but we have got very cozy armchairs. They're very old, very comfortable, a great place to sit. I do a lot of reading here. I read a lot of business books here, I also think. And when I've got guests around or my wife would chat through things as well. So I thought this was a nice cozy place to have a chat to you about a couple of things. The quality of your questions determines the quality of your life. Tony Robbins, very famous, very good quote. I believe that to be true. I think he also said the quality of your questions determines what you focus on, and what you focus on determines the quality of your life. So that's the missing piece. In business, what you focus on is very, very important. Where your focus goes, your energy goes. And where your focus goes, if you're the CEO of a business, that's where the focus and energy of your business goes as well. But if it's just you, then it's 100% true. It tends to be true with employees or staff of any kind as well. So what's this got to do with Amazon? Well, everything and nothing. But the main thing that's prompted today is I see a lot of questions on Facebook groups from fairly new buyers, fairly new sellers, I should say Amazon sellers. I suppose I say the word buyers because they bought into the idea of having an Amazon business. It's funny Freudian slip that. And some very good advice comes out. But the thing is this, if you focus on the wrong questions, you're never going to get good advice. It's never going to be helpful. Today, I want to talk about Amazon ads. There is a couple of metrics that people like to talk about around this that I think one in particular is a big, big red herring. If you focus on this, it ain't going to help you, in my humble opinion. And this is after many, many hours of debating this with 6, 7, and even occasionally 8-figure Amazon sellers that are in masterminds that I'm a member of, or I run, or what have you, plus reflecting on my own experience as an Amazon seller. So here's the thing that's wrong. ACoS, advertising cost of sales. First hint that is not a great thing to follow is, my question is, have you ever seen that outside the Amazon ecosystem? Now, one of the disadvantages you'll have if you come to Amazon as your first ever sort of business model, let alone online marketing one, is you won't have any sort of sets of references. But I can promise you that is not a metric any normal business would recognize, which isn't necessarily a sign that it's wrong, but it sounds very technical, and it kind of is, and it sounds financial, and it is as well. But what it is really is a red herring. Here's why. Because if you have, there's all sorts of stuff that people say on Facebook groups. So my ACoS is 200%. That's really bad. What can I do to change it? My ACoS is 50%. And people are saying, oh, that's not bad. An average ACoS should be 10%. Says who? Based on what? See, this is a false kind of specificity. For starters, if you're really going to get into detail, you're going to have to be able to find a forum where you should reveal a lot of detail about your product and the entire system within which that ACoS number fits before somebody can give meaningful feedback on a detailed number like that. And of course, you don't want to be doing that on a Facebook group. I would advise against that unless it's within a very trusted forum of people who have signed non-disclosure agreements and stuff, or with a coach where you're working one-to-one. And that's the sort of thing I do a lot. I spend a lot of time analyzing people's ACoS, but not really the ACoS. The advertising spend, absolutely critical. Of course it is. And the spend per product line is also a critical number. But the ACoS, if you think about it, if you're running a manual campaign and you're bidding on a particular keyword, let's say, I don't know, digital watch for the sake of argument, because that's what I can see in front of me, Don't sell digital watches. Not a good plan. Multiple reasons. It's dominated by a brand. I've got Casio on my wrist here, been dominant in the space for 30 years or whatever, ever since they were invented. And also it's electronics, which you shouldn't be sourcing unless you really know what you're doing. So don't do this at home, folks. But say I'm trying to bid on the keyword digital watch for a particular product. Let's assume it's a black digital watch with orange sort of face, which is what I can see here. Well, okay, good. So let's say you bid on that and you pay, it's a cost per click system. So let's say you get 1,000 impressions, 1,000 people see the ad, and you get a decent click-through rate, say 1%. So 10 people click on it and you make one sale in a given period, say a month, right? Great. Okay. And so let's say I'm selling it for $20 and the clicks $1 a click. So I've had 10 clicks at $1 each. That's $10 advertising cost. And then I've had sales of $20. So my advertising cost to spend is $10 for the advertising divided by the sales that I've made via the advertising. Hint, $20, 10 divided by 20 is 50%. Okay. So that seems like a number I should keep an eye on, right? But here's the thing. Unlike with Google as a system, the Amazon search algorithm, the organic one, will reward your products for getting clicks through advertising, which means that if you rank a product, for example, for digital watch, which very unlikely, it's incredibly generic. I don't know, black digital watch, orange face might be better, but whatever. Digital watch. And you manage to rank it through advertising sales, right? You give the algorithm a bit of a hint that it should be ranking your product for that keyword organically. In other words, when a buyer comes onto Amazon and types in digital watch and clicks search, the search results page, maybe page 1, page 2, page 3, whatever, should show your product a little bit higher than it did last time. And that is actually, for me, the main use of advertising, apart from a discovery mechanism and keyword research and stuff, which is a separate matter. But insofar it is a sales mechanism and a ranking mechanism, right? It's kind of both, which is a good thing and also a confusing thing. It's good to get sales whilst you also get your product ranked, because that helps your cash flow. But the main benefit for me in most cases of advertising is that you drive organic sales. Now, here's the problem. Let's say in that month period you drove you're launching a new product, and it's a bit of a strange period. Let's say in one month you had 10,000 impressions on this keyword. You had 1% click-through rate, so you got 100 clicks, and you made let's say 50 sales because you have a 50% conversion rate, right? The maths is still the same. It's 50% ACoS, right? But let's imagine in that same period you sold 400 units via the keyword digital watch, but 300 of them are probably organic and the 100 is driven by advertising. Well, now, how do we account for the organic sales and the value of your advertising for the organic sales? It certainly isn't ACoS. If you think about it clear-mindedly, the ACoS, the cost of advertising for the sales via adverts, is what ACoS measures. So it doesn't take account of the productivity of your advertising across all of your sales for that product line. And the solution is very, very simple. There's a metric which you can call different things. Some people call it the real ACoS. Some people call it the actual ACoS, ACoS. I would call it advertising to sales ratio because that's an industry standard thing across the board in any kind of industry that's about fast-moving consumer goods, or in fact, even broader than that. So it's not just an Amazon-specific thing, which is a good hint, right? That it's actually a normal business metric, which is a good plan to use because in the end, we have to compare the opportunity of selling products on Amazon with other possible uses of our time, money, and effort and focus, right? And that means we can compare like with like a bit more there because the advertising to sales ratio takes the total ad spend on a product line in a given period divided by all of the sales, not just the ones driven by a particular ad platform. So if you spend some money on Facebook ads and you spend money on Amazon, you just add that together. That's your advertising spend. And let's say over a 30-year period, like 30-day period, the last 30 days, and let's add up all the sales that you get on a particular product line, say over the last 30 days, then your advertising to spend ratio is very simple. It's all of the ad spend divided by all the sales. And that gives you sort of an efficiency ratio for how well your advertising is helping to drive sales. And that's a way more valid metric. Personally, I wouldn't bundle up together Facebook and Amazon ad spend, by the way I just suggested. That's probably not a helpful metric. So forget that. But just Amazon ad spends, which is what most of us focus on most of the time for driving ordinary sales. Facebook ads probably for launch, and that's kind of a separate issue anyway. So coming back to this, why is this helpful? Now, number one, it gives you a much broader perspective, but still product line specific on how useful your advertising is being. And I'm not suggesting that you don't go into the weeds and look at the Amazon ads data carefully. You should look at the click-through rates and the absolute sales rates to some degree. And if you've got a low click-through rates, that's not a good sign, because you're going to be sending bad signals to the algorithm that it's not going to help rank your product organically for that keyword, right? It's a slightly different reason for not doing it. But here's why advertising to sales ratio is great. First of all, it simplifies everything, but not in a stupid way, in an intelligent way. Secondly, it stops you going mad trying to manage things via a silly metric like ACoS that is meaningless in isolation. I hope I made clear why that is. And the third thing is, it's a very, very simple matter to look at your profit margin per unit, your gross margin, and your ad spend per unit, or your total ad spend and your total margin for the month. It doesn't matter. It should be the same thing percentage-wise. And see if you're making a profit, breaking if you're making a loss. So if your gross margin on a product after cost of goods sold, so the total landed cost, manufacturing, freight, insurance, import duties, import costs generally, etc., plus the Amazon fulfillment fees and costs, plus the Amazon selling fees, so the commission, right? So you got the total revenue or the price you sell it for minus all those costs gives you your gross margin. The gross margin after ads then is got to be bigger than the total cost. So if you've got if you're selling a unit for $20 and your pre-advertising total cost is $15, you've got a $5 profit in there, or 25%. If your advertising to sales ratio on a product with that slim margins, which not that uncommon for a beginner especially, is above 25%, you're actually losing money on each sale. If it's lower, you're making a profit. And it's kind of that simple, really, because what other costs have you got? You've taken account of every other cost. Now you've got to take your advertising cost into account. That's the gross margin. It doesn't take account of overheads. I'm not talking about anything else outside of the gross profit and loss, but still, per product line, that's actually the kind of metric you need to steer it by. In the end, what you need is a product that will make a profit. And of course, the sell-through rate is also critical. That's another metric that people don't tend to look at. And there's a lot of hot air talked about that, and I'll talk about that in another episode. But this is pretty robust, pretty simple, very reliable. It's what all the serious sellers I know use without exception, and people get caught up in this ACoS world. So why does ACoS even exist then? And why are we being so cavaliers to ignore it? Well, think about it. I have an AdWords account with Google, and they very often get hold of me and they try and persuade me to spend more money in order to, optimize or make my campaign otherwise better. But guess what their motivation is? I mean, Google makes its money from advertising. Now, Amazon has a couple of very profitable divisions. Mostly it's not a profitable company, never has been. In fact, it's made paper-thin profits for pretty much all of its existence. Of course, there's a very solid strategic reason behind that. Jeff Bezos is the savviest guy in the planet right now, in my opinion, or pretty much up there. And one of the reasons is their tax strategy. They've avoided sales tax for 25 years. They're finally being made personally, if you like, or as a company responsible for sales tax. But also the other big income, the other big tax is tax on your profits as a corporation. So if you don't pay any taxes, you can get the money back into the company without the tax inefficiency and grow your business quicker. And if it's all about growth, which for the stock market it largely is, especially Amazon's growth stock, not a dividend stock, i.e. doesn't pay out much cash, then that's what they want to do, right? But even Amazon has to keep the lights on, so they need cash. And even Amazon has shareholders who eventually in the last couple of years have been pushing to get a little bit more profit. So AWS is the only other really profitable part of Amazon Web Services, where they provide services very, very cheaply as a sort of computing platform for the planet, including everyone, famously including the CIA and things like that. And the other thing is the advertising. That is very profitable for them. So unsurprisingly, Amazon's pushed to get their profits up from that. And the profits for Amazon ads on the Amazon.com retail platform have gone up from about $2 billion a year ago to about 10 billion, the last figure that I heard. Now, that may be very out of date, but it doesn't matter. It gives you an idea of the scale. It's 5x, 500% increase in money to Amazon through ads of the last year. Obviously, they want us to spend our money on advertising. If they give a delusion of control via ACoS, then it gives us the feeling that we know what we're doing, and it means that we're measuring the metrics in the wrong way. I mean, you don't necessarily need to worry about ACoS. I mean, it depends on your margins and the effects it's got overall on ranking. Really, the simplest metrics in business often turn out to be the most important. Again, I'm not saying you shouldn't do things like negative keyword use or efficient use of the data to hone your advertising. You should, but ACoS is probably going to be one of the last metrics that I would look at. And as an overall kind of way of steering your Amazon ads, it's a sort of can't see the wood for the trees syndrome, because if you are focused on ACoS, that's by keyword or maybe by advertising campaign. The auto campaigns, you can't break it down by keyword, obviously. But it's still the wrong metric to be worrying about. The one that really, really, really matters is what's your gross margin, how much you're spending on advertising, and if you've got a profit left after that. Because the rest is detail. And yes, you can do negative keywords, you can do all sorts of stuff that is beyond my ability to say in about 5 seconds here. And some of it's quite technical, and I would suggest you get an expert involved in that as well. There are many, many, many of them out there. People see Entourage, very good. Brian Johnson's stuff is very good. There's lots of good people out there now. But before you dive into the detail, just look at the right big picture metrics and don't look at the wrong details. So there you go. Hopefully that was helpful. I'm kind of amazed that anyone's still looking at ACoS. I guess I live in a world where the people I know who are the serious sellers don't really take that much notice of it now. I mean, they might, just keep an eye on it in the early days, because the very early days of selling a product, what I mean is when you just launched it, nearly all the sales are going to come from PPC, because obviously it has almost no organic ranking. So at that point, yeah, if you've got 100% ACoS on a product line and you're only selling sort of 8 out of 10 of them are sold via advertising, that is quite similar to your total advertising to sales ratio, right? And by the way, spending 100% of your product revenue on advertising isn't necessarily the wrong thing to do. This is a slightly different discussion, but that's about launch. As long as you know what you're doing and have a particular objective for it, that's not necessarily a problem either. But I suppose I was mostly addressing what you should be doing once you've got a product launch and you're trying to make a profit. So again, it comes down to clear objectives. So I probably shouldn't muddy the waters with that, but I'm just saying there is no single ACoS figure that's right, and ACoS isn't even a thing you should be worrying about. Right? The advertising to spend ratio is the way forward. It simplifies things a lot as well, which is a wonderful side benefit, but that's not the main reason for doing it. The main reason is it's meaningful. In the end, and this is going to be the theme, I want to do a few different ones about metrics, different broadcasts about that. In the end, what really matters is that you're measuring something meaningful in the wider business context. If you're worrying about profit, then what matters is you determine profit. If you're thinking about cash flow, then what matters is you determine what your cash flow now is and or project into the future what it's going to be. Those are really, really important basics of business. And any other metrics you have to relate to those big picture metrics to be meaningful, in my opinion. And the same with marketing as well. Market share is a very meaningful thing. But again, that's measured by revenue. In the end, a lot of marketing metrics break down sooner or later to financial metrics. I mean, things like click-through rates breaks down to sort of not so much market share as a sort of search share, really. There's a few different ways of looking at it, but this is getting beyond the scope of this little chat. But what is important is to measure meaningful things that relate to a wider, simple business context. In the end, a lot of it comes down to profit, return on investment, and or cash flow. So we'll be talking about a few more metrics and a few more red herrings that I see out there. Hopefully this has been a helpful and clarifying thing. Listen again if you need to and think it through, because this is not rocket science. It's the opposite, actually. It's simplifying something that people make into rocket science into something essentially very simple you can do with in the back of an envelope. And this is a sort of sanity metric that I often go through with people who come to me where they've got listings in trouble. I say, well, we've got a few options to look at, but one ratio we absolutely should measure now is the advertising to sales ratio. And then if you adjust your price or the anything else about your listing, or you adjust your ad spend, then we should keep an eye on that ratio. And it's not necessarily always about having profit. If your objective is to launch a product, you're not about profit, you're making loss. If your objective is to sell through a product because you think it's a bit of a rubbish choice and you just want to turn that inventory into cash, then you might not be interested in profit either. You might just work at break even. But that should be a conscious decision to aim for launch, profit, or break even. And then you should make sure that the metrics you're using align with those different objectives. So again, probably going a bit too broad for the purposes of this show, but hope that's been helpful. Hope you like the format, a little bit different. I quite like sitting and having a chat in an armchair. There's something a bit different about it than sitting there with my suit and in front of a whiteboard. But talking of which, I've got to go and talk to a client soon, and we've got to go and talk about product research, where there's some false metrics there as well. We'll be talking about that at another point. Thanks very much for taking the time with me today. Really enjoyed it. Take care.